guys, and welcome back to the Gentleman's Standard. I'm Yor-El Francis.
And I'm Cecil Burrows.
And today we're talking about the return. We've come full circle, and the return is that moment when a man decides, I don't want to stay here.
Gotten here, I've arrived here, and I don't want to stay here. That's a perfect way of putting it. It is also the full arc of our first season.
Indeed.
This is our last episode of the season. Our overall goal of what we're trying to accomplish is give you some insight and thought from individuals who have experienced some, level of success in their professional and personal spaces, professional careers, personal spaces, the learnings that we've amassed along the way, and just give you a different perspective, hopefully, and some insights for those that need it. I mean, obviously, if you're listening in, you're searching for something, you're searching for an opportunity, or you're trying to do an honest assessment of things that work for you, haven't worked for you, and getting a different thought pattern that's out there. So we're hoping that we're able to hit that. We started off just talking about some baseline foundation building habits, right? Grooming and how you show up, your presence when you're into a space, how you build yourself up from an inner standard perspective. And then we tackled some pretty weighty topics, things like drifting off of who you are and eroding, experiencing the silence, the imposter syndrome element, the mask that we all have to wear to fit in, and how do we start compiling our way back to some type of discipline standard. And one of the things that I hope has been evidently clear to everybody that we've been trying to say on a consistent basis is standards matter. Standards are set, they're not followed. We'll consistently echo that sentiment. We think that matters. We think that's ultimately the way that you're going to help to build yourself up and sustain a certain level of success, ideally in the things that matter to you. So today, what we really get into from the return-based perspective is the fall is inevitable. It is as you breathe, the fall is inevitable. The question is what happened on the return for you, and what changes did you experience, and did you change for the better?
Every story worth telling brings the hero home. And sometimes the home has changed.
Yeah.
So it's what you've been carrying and that equals or turns into what the journey cost. And if you come back with the same, I think then your journey may not have been as worth it as you may have thought.
Mm-hmm. Obviously, you're in entertainment. For those, that was an amazing line. That was an amazing line.
I think that for me, the return is really building back after what we discussed in the drift, mm-hmm. and how you bring that home and how you center yourself after really almost losing your being, mm-hmm. In the slide away from your standards.
Sure.
And it's a human thing. We're all flawed. Mm-hmm. And I think approaching it from that perspective, knowing that yes, there can be a drift, but the path back and building a path back and knowing there's a path back, yeah. and fighting that path back to your return, I think is important. I think it's important for building up your self-esteem. I think it's important for goal setting. I think it's important for purpose. I think, as you talked about me bringing it back to storytelling or movie making, mm-hmm. it's the oldest trope in storytelling, mm-hmm. is bringing that person back, yeah. in return.
Yeah. So let me ask you this question. I want to see if this is kind of universal, right? Mm-hmm. Some of the stats that go along with this. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that interested me when we're going down this path and we're looking at LinkedIn surveys. Right, that's where we operate from a corporate perspective, right? Exactly. It's LinkedIn. But 68% of professionals experience a career setback in the past 5 years. 75% of those who had a setback said they were demotivated for 3 or more months after. And that's real. I mean, when things hit you from that standpoint, it takes you a little bit of a time to get your return going. Mm-hmm. And when you look at research, basically one of the things I saw, roughly half of the 2/3 of people facing some type of adversity, they have some type of post-traumatic growth that comes along with that, which is awesome to hear that occurs. The question is, and you brought this point up earlier, is eventually you have to return, right? The question is the room that you return to, which is that post-traumatic growth that you experience.
The comeback is practically a genre.
Yeah.
In of itself.
And would you say those stats mirror in what you experience in the entertainment industry from what individuals in just corporate setting are articulating?
I think it's universal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think that it's this or that. I think it's universal.
All right.
And I think the key is, as we've talked about, not airbrushing the fall, not airbrushing the drift, but just grasping it head on.
Okay.
And recognizing that happened. And then once you're there, building your way back.
Okay.
And I think it's easy to sort of sit in that moment of drifting, but there comes a point when you have to, I guess, get the wake-up call and start putting the bricks back together and building yourself back up to whatever that return is for you.
Sure. The challenge for a lot of folks, and I've got a lot of compatriots and individuals that I came up with in the corporate environment, inevitably just putting it out there. The sad part around being in corporate is that it is, and it's, we went into the sports component
in the last episode.
And one of the things that coaches will tell you, players will tell you, corporate execs will tell you, actors will tell you, directors, others, production staff will tell you, nothing is eternal. And in the corporate environment, especially in banking, and kind of pulling it back to me, for the overall gist of what we're talking about here, which is the return, is the shame element that comes along with that. The fall, inevitably, more times than not in corporate, is you being let go. And more times than not, a lot of companies, they cut to efficiency for shareholder value and things along those lines. From a company-based perspective, they're doing this to be a more efficient, optimized company, hitting targets in a more effective way. They want to spend a certain percentage to make $1, and that is really at its crux and core what drives a lot of corporations. And more times than not, you'll find yourself sitting in a space where the company's finally said, "Listen, we love you," and that's what it's always the toughest message to take, right? It's, we love you, we love all the things you've done, you've been a major valuable asset, you've gotten us here, but we got to move on without you. There comes in the shame element from that standpoint, and when you're trying to return, the issue for a lot of these folks is, how do I get past the shame of, if you truly valued me, I would have never been the one let go. I would have been on the other side of it, right?
I think that returning to your standard is somewhat harder than setting it because of what you are saying.
Okay.
And I think that shame, for sure, is a key component, because you are in this space where you've been accustomed to X, Y, or Z.
Right.
Be it lifestyle, income, however you want to phrase it. And then it could, you could have lost all of that. And I think that in that milieu, it again is about, once that's gone, what is that core?
Okay.
And so if that core is shaken, yes, that's going to be, really hard to build back. But if it's still there and intact, then you start building the bricks back and helping yourself step by step to whatever, new goal or achievement it might be. But it's not easy. And I think we would be remiss if we painted a picture of it's rosy. It's not.
Sure.
It's making decisions. It's making hard decisions. It's making and having hard conversations. And sometimes it's about understanding that what once you had, you may not have again. And so that is part, I think, of your return journey.
Mm-hmm.
And in those conversations with yourselves, family members, etc., whomever it might be, I think you then sort of calibrate yourself
Okay.
to whatever this new purpose, goal, feature is.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's part and parcel of what we discussed earlier about reinventing yourself. It's starting a new journey.
So I'll my and I've been a victim of this as well, being in the wrong seat at the wrong time in a
Mm-hmm.
company, where the decision is made. Listen, valuable asset, we still value you, but we're moving on and closing up this shop.
Mm-hmm.
From that standpoint, and your initial shame is bullshit. You say you value me, but you would have found something for me. That's the initial shame and ego and all of that comes in play. So it takes you a little bit of time to get over that.
Mm-hmm. You've got to process that.
You're human,
Yeah.
right? From that standpoint, and once you start getting there and you start talking with others that have experienced it, they go, this is either the time that you break
Mm-hmm.
and you don't come back, and unfortunately some people have made that decision, or you realize this for what it is. This is the best thing that's ever could have happened to you. From that standpoint, if you approach it in that mindset, which can be a complete line of BS, right? Because you're like, how the hell does that happen? I got bills I got to pay. I got things I got to deal with. I got a family, that I'm working on for things from that standpoint. Even if you're on your own, there are things that you want to do and things that your career has afforded to you. But if you really actually follow that line, and I think it's important for people to tell that to you,
Mm-hmm.
this can be the best thing that ever happened to you. If you really, really invest in that, there's a certain level of calmness that comes along with that. And I erred on the side of that. I said, listen, I'm going to land something. I have to apply my steps along the ways that I've started to build, because I
Mm-hmm.
built myself up not to sit here and just let this be the furthest I can come
Mm-hmm.
from that standpoint. So what was helpful for me when the fall inevitably came and the return needed to come is I looked at the other things that I wanted to do,
Mm-hmm.
and I started leaning in on them.
Mm-hmm.
There was some consulting work that I wanted to do. Okay, what's stopping you from doing that? Sure, you're going to sit there and try to find a way to replace the gap career that's come up. While that's happening, you now have time afforded to you to actually potentially live your dream. And for somebody like me that I told you was an accidental banker, I didn't get into the thing that was my passion point that drove my energy each and every day. I said, let me start doing some of those things that actually I would really, really enjoy. And that is what kept me sane with the learning that came back. So as I'm going down path to get into my next career,
Mm-hmm.
what I've done is I went and I strengthened certain areas so I would be insulated from the next inevitable thing that happens. Because when you're in corporate, the one thing that's certain is that that role that you're in is going to end at some point.
And I think that the key to all of it is purpose. And so it's, did the job define you, or are you, it's like if the job is all you are,
Sure.
and you are just that man, then I think then you fall apart.
Yeah.
And I think that if there isn't anything other than that in your, life tree, so
Yeah.
to speak,
Yeah.
I think that's where that tree starts to wither.
That's a great
If we're
point.
going to use the tree analogy,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that that's where the breakdown comes in.
Mm-hmm.
That's where not understanding that it's okay. This is, not the end of the road, but it
Yeah.
is just another branch, that you've branched out on. It's nothing that you could have foreseen, but
Sure.
it's, as you said, sometimes inevitable in certain professions.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, and this is just throughout life, if you lose that purpose, then something inside you, I think, dies.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but what can you do?
Sure.
If there's no spark, there's no flame. That's it.
Yeah.
Even if you look at people who retire, if they have no purpose, and there's nothing there that they're doing that drives them, that gives them that A, B, C, D, E, F, G for the next day, they're gone within a year or two.
Yeah.
So I feel that after you've drifted and you're trying to find your way back, if your only purpose was the job that you were in, and that's where you are, you'll never be able to build yourself back to return.
So said another way, if a person asks you, what did the return cost you? What did it teach you? It is that you found out that you are not your job.
Exactly. My standard is greater than the job.
Okay.
Right? It's and I think that's the crux of what I think we're trying to do.
Yes.
Is to say that have something more than just your 9 to 5.
Correct.
And build that into who you are.
Yeah.
And keep having more, because that's what I've seen in the people who are in my life. Elders, mentees, etc. They have many things going, and they thrive. And so that's what I aspire to.
I've said several times that the reason that we do this is to counterbalance the whole idea around the alpha male concept being the only way that you can accomplish things. Because if everyone is an alpha male, there's no one's alpha male from that standpoint. And the advice that folks are getting, it's a little convoluted, it's a little complex, because some of the folks that are telling you and giving you direction on how to be an alpha male are individuals that are completely out of your ecosystem or ways that you can accomplish it. It just doesn't make sense, it doesn't tie in. But what you can do is be disciplined relative to building yourself up, to your point. And so when we talk about establishing standards and not letting one thing define you, what I'm hearing you say, and I'd love for you to give an example of what you've seen in the entertainment industry around how that's come to play on somebody that you've seen had to return from that standpoint. But I know in the corporate space and the ways I had to build myself up to return is I leaned in on all the things that I did that established me with a certain level of self-reflection and respect that I had for myself and my career and what I could bring to the table, that it allowed me not to just sit there and whittle into or be mired in, I'm undervalued, no one appreciates me, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, which literally it just busts you down rungs off that climb that we talked about before, and it can keep you there from that standpoint. And I started realizing, here's some things I want to do and try. With the time afforded to me, I'm going to try to do that. I'm going to experience that, because my comeback builds an even fuller version of me that now has me prepared for when the inevitable happens with the next step. When I inevitably return in the corporate space, it was, okay, I've returned in the corporate space, but I'm also doing this, this, and this, so my day feels so much more fulfilled than it did before. That was what I learned. My teaching was that I was so much more than my job.
I'll use myself as the example.
Okay.
So we've talked about the entertainment strike of 2023.
Yes. Yep.
So during that time, what I did was I said, I'm just sitting here at home. I'm going to put together a team. So I put together a team of folks to produce a project that was a passion project of mine.
Okay.
And it was an international team, and I succeeded in every step of the way. There was a Brazilian cinematographer, Lilian Soares, who had just won the Sundance Institute Cinematography Award of the Year.
Yeah.
I didn't know her from Adam.
Okay.
And I just reached out to her and explained the project, explained my passion about it, and she reached back and said, let's talk. And we started talking, and we just were simpatico. Like it was as if we were twins with the vision that we had for this project.
Got it.
So it was me sort of pivoting, I guess would be the word.
Okay.
Yes, I don't have A, but let's see what B can bring. And that was my return, so to speak, building back to that.
So your learning was, we have this avenue that's been closed off to me.
Create a new one. And since this avenue is not giving me A, I'll go over here to Z and see if I can get X, Y, and Z.
What did you find was different about you?
I was freer. I was even more passionate.
Okay.
It was extremely fulfilling. And working with her was just a joy.
Okay.
And it was just brilliant.
The thing I think I learned on my return was I had lost a little confidence for the years of letting myself get comfortable.
And that's the drift.
The upward mobility that I had experienced for so long, I got comfortable with it and had said, you know, I've reached the level of success that I think I'm at, plateaued wise. And when I recognized, you got hungry again, and you start plying your old trade around what got me to get to where I was, and then you realize there's levels to this where there's even more heights that I can reach on the fulfillment element of everything, not just a certain, like we talked about in the last episode, not just a certain number I'm trying to accomplish financially, just experiences, the things that I can do. The scariest part is I had a family member who passed away right after she retired at a retirement dinner.
Oh man.
Day of.
Oh.
And you start recognizing, and I mean she was like a mom to me from that standpoint. And you start recognizing there's so many people that retire and lose their way and lose their vision. And not to say that's the case for her, not at all.
Right.
But there's individuals that I've talked to that have faced this and like, I don't know what to do with my time. And they sit around, things just start, and then shortly thereafter, the inevitable happens.
Exactly.
What this did, the change in me from this standpoint was it was kind of an eye-opener to say, there are other things to life. There's other things that I want to do outside of just my professional responsibilities that was really had turned into myself. And I've recognized I am more than that. I can still deliver at levels that, you know, I'm competing in a competitor and all of that, like the Kevin Durant thing we talked about. I can still accomplish certain things at levels that people would hire me to do, but there's other projects and things that I think I can lend my leadership, my thought leadership, myself to, that'll give back, and including community responsibilities, things like being on a board, giving back professionally, pouring into the youth, things like that have just brought such level of fulfillment that I think I'm more balanced than I was before. And that was my learning from that standpoint as an opportunity, which would counterbalance some of what we see around people who take, you know, through months to get back from their initial fall to try to get the return and come back without real learning.
I think that a growth mindset is linked to faster recovery from setbacks, for sure. And I think that sometimes, to your point of what you just stated, you really can't put a time limit on your return. I think that those factors, sometimes you can't really help. But I think what you can help is what you're doing with the time, which is what we're talking about. And I think that in reinventing yourself, in pivoting and seeking a new course, a new direction, as you're waiting for A to happen, I think sometimes, at least for me, it gave me that mindset, that growth mindset. And it gave me that new factor of, this is what I'm focused on. And so it sort of, it drowns out the noise of whatever, let's say, shame or, you know, burden or weight that you may be carrying with your situation. At least for me it did. And it gave me instead a sort of guiding star, guiding light to say, hey, this is now the new goal.
The big thing here for this topic is, and I'm just speaking to those who are following along with us and trying to figure out what to take out of this, is the one thing we want to be clear about is we're working, as I started off saying, we're giving you tools to consider from folks that have been there, done that. Mm-hmm. But there's a certain level of honest assessment that needs to occur. What we're letting you know is the fall is inevitable. Okay, it's going to come. What we're hoping you've done is you've anchored yourself in a certain set of standards that will insulate you from a full fall, right? From that standpoint, or at least give you the tactics and tips to bring you back, hopefully, from a quicker based perspective. But the one thing you cannot do is not be honest through the process, because what inevitably I've come across people who have done the return, mm-hmm. and you ask them, well, what'd you learn? And they go, no, I'm the same person. Well, if you're the same person, you didn't actually come back.
And that's a valid point. You don't return to who you were.
You do not.
And I am a firm believer that a lot of people think that just returning is restoring what you had.
Sure.
Return for me is a transformation.
Correct.
It's a course correct. It's a reinvention. It's becoming something new.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you're coming back to the old version of yourself, for me, that's not the return.
You missed the whole point of what you went through.
Because what happens is then you come back carrying what you kind of, that weight,
Correct.
And so that then you take forward with you.
Yeah. And
you need to shake that off.
What inevitably happens to the point you're making is individuals who keep telling you, listen, I'm myself, I will always be myself, and you ask them what they learn about a certain situation, and they go, I didn't really learn much. And
that's that I think is the only thing you should come back with, is learning what that fall taught you. Because
if not, you keep falling.
Yeah, you should be able to say, well, this is the block,
yeah,
and this is the other block, and putting these together equaled that.
Sure.
And so this is the story from that.
Yeah.
And take that and move forward with it.
My fall that I experienced was misunderstanding the room that I was in, and thinking that it could go on forever, and realizing now, what I know now, based off of when I experienced my fall, is that no place is safe. Relative to company assessing who you are, what value you bring, the line of work that you do, and whether that can remain forever. You've got to have a strategy and tactic around what happens if the inevitable occurs, not if the worst thing occurs, the inevitable occurs. Like I said, you're in any role professionally. If you're in any role professionally, there is the chance that the next day is your last. How have you prepared for that? And I can say I got to a point of where I felt so insulated that I thought it would never happen. And when it did, it took me a second to get myself back up. But when I did, it was like, okay, here are the different ways I'm going to ensure I get value back to myself, but I also insulate myself from this occurring again.
I also want to say that you don't just wake up and you've returned.
You don't.
You don't just wake up and the transformation has happened. Mm-hmm. I think it's building blocks, it's steps, it's understanding that it's a journey, and it's not. And I don't think you know what that transformation is going to be either.
Sure.
I think it's just having that goal to head in that direction. I think is where you begin that journey. And I think that what I would like people to take away from this is that we're not preaching that the transformation, instant.
Yeah.
It's a journey, and it's a process.
Mm-hmm.
But understand that you have to begin that journey.
The one thing I would say that I think is extremely important that I did was label all the learnings that I got out of what occurred. And honestly, some of the things that were some of my fault, some of the things that the things I could not control, and then figure out what's your build back. And for me, I had a list of learnings that came out of this, and then what I was going to do differently going forward. And that I got from a mentor of mine who had experienced it himself. He'd been displaced. He was going through the process, and he goes, listen, he's the one that gave me that mindset. This is the best thing that's going to happen to you. He goes, it doesn't sound that way, doesn't feel that way, but it's the best thing that's going to happen to you. He goes, because it's going to wake you up. And then he talked about the things that he started cataloging around his build back. From that standpoint, he talked about the things that he had learned along the way, and I then got a chance to apply that. And I was like, I became so comfortable, I had forgotten X, Y, and Z. And I was then allowed to, basically through this process, assessing, recalibrate what I needed to do when the inevitable comes back. Because if you plan accordingly, it will come back.
Yeah, and I think that the lesson isn't that the fall was good, as you illustrated. It's something good came out of it.
Yep.
And so you took those lessons from your mentor and apply them to yourself and built and are building. And I think it's also returning to structure, discipline, integrity after your fall, or after the weight, after the slide, after the drift. And it's just basically getting back in alignment.
Yeah.
Because again, you are moving in a space where that job or that situation gave you this purpose, this shape, and now it was taken away, and now you're out of alignment, and returning is building that back into a better alignment.
The thing you said that really resonated with me is returning to your standard is harder than setting it.
It's really harder than setting it.
And it's because the shame is in the way. And we have to get past that component, because a lot of that is self-placed. That's our ego. That's us having to deal with and process the shame component that comes in play. But don't let that be a detractor around where you want to get, right? From that standpoint, it is definitely harder than setting it. But if you get around the shame element that comes in play, remove that from a factor, and you build yourself up and be purposeful around how you approach it, you will come back 150% of what you were, with the learnings that are accompanying you to be a better version of yourself. It just happens that way every time if you do that way.
And I want to close by saying this. The return, I think, is never finished.
Yeah, it's a great point.
Because I think that sometimes we always thinking, once I get back on track, et cetera, et cetera.
Sure.
It's not an event. It's part of your toolbox as a gentleman.
Yeah.
And I think it's practice. And so if it's in that toolbox, then you know how to utilize it.
Correct.
And it's never finished.
I would agree. What we've tried to do is lay out some baseline things. We're gonna this is season 1 of several seasons, because this is a topic that we think is important to individuals that are looking for advice, insight, and thought leadership from folks that have lived it. Not have been perfect at it, but that have lived it to a degree. And I wish I would have had something like this. And there's a lot of folks out, but I wish I would have had something like this when I was in college. And I had questions, and I was looking for blueprints, and I was looking for insights to kind of pull through. We have tackled building a strong foundation. We've tackled how you show up. We've tackled how you build yourself up and stick to that. We've tackled how you let yourself go. We've tackled around how to overcome feeling like an imposter in certain spaces.
The inner standard.
We've tackled around dealing with the mask that we have to put on in different versions of ourselves. From that standpoint, we tackle the silence that you experience.
And the climb.
And the climb as you're going through. And are you climbing to places that you deem your peak or not? And what we're now talking about is the return. As you inevitably stumble, how do you get back up walking the way that you need to in an effective manner? Those are gentlemanly standards that we're trying to get to from that standpoint. And we're going to continue to attack some of these topics with some fresh minds, with some guests that'll give us some perspectives as well around how they've been able to, within their industry, get themselves to the level of success that they're experiencing, but also the things that they're looking for individuals that they're going to help to pour into and bring up. So I'm pretty excited about season 2 and what's to come in that space, because I just, from the feedback that we're getting and the folks that are reaching out to us and the folks that are like, this, you don't understand that this was something I needed to hear. Which, by the way, the folks that are telling me have surprised me, because I didn't think that they needed it from that standpoint. So that let me know that an idea that formed when you and I were just talking and you thought there was a need for this type of conversation, that it would hit the folks that it is, and the subscribers that we're starting to experience, et cetera, and the questions that are coming up, including the ladies, by the way, who are reaching out to us. Thank you for considering this an opportunity and group that you want to get some insights from, because I think I talked about this episodes ago. My strongest leaders have been female, and they've imparted to me levels of wisdoms that have really curated my career to levels that I never thought I would have reached. So inevitably our goal, while we're talking about gentlemanly standards, we also want to pay feedback to the female leaders that are out there that have influenced us greatly to be who we are. So.
And sometimes it's not about the comeback, it's about identity.
Perfect.
All right. See you next time, guys.